This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're on the road in Texas on our Community Voices Community Media Tour. I'm Amy Goodman. Iran's Attorney General suggested Wednesday the jailed Iranian-American reporter Roxanna Saberi should directly appeal to the Supreme Leader Khamenei for amnesty. Saberi was sentenced last week to 8 years in prison after being convicted for spying for the United States. Roxanna's father says she's on a hunger strike protesting her conviction, but the Iranian judiciary denies Saberi's refusing to eat. Roxanna Saberi has reported from Iran for National Public Radio and for the BBC for the past 6 years. She was arrested in January. The Nobel Peace Laureate and Iranian human rights lawyer Shirin Ebadi is on Saberi's legal team. I caught up with Ebadi yesterday in Austin, Texas, where she's giving a series of lectures at UT, the University of Texas. I asked Shirin Ebadi for the latest on Roxanna Saberi.
بعد از اینکه رکسانا صابری در یک دادرسی غیرعادلانه به 8 سال حبس محکوم شد.
After Roxanna Saberi was arrested and convicted in an unfair trial that sentenced her to 8 years in prison, her father came to me and asked me to represent her. So I myself, along with 2 other colleagues, Mr. Soltani and Ms. Parokande, have taken up her case. Mr. Soltani went 6 times to try to meet with her, but he was denied a meeting with her. We've also been denied a chance to look at the trial case and the files that are involved because we are independent lawyers and they will not allow us to access the information we want.
Can you tell us what you understand about this case? Why was she convicted?
من میتونم بگم که دادرسی غیرعادلانه
I can say that the trial was unfair, and it actually violated Iran's very laws. According to our constitution, political charges must be given in the presence of a jury in an open court session. But in Roxanna Saberi's case, the trial happened behind closed doors in the absence of a jury, and her father was denied entry into the courtroom.
و همچنین
Also, when a person is arrested, they must have access to a lawyer almost immediately, very soon after arrest. But according to the decision and order of the prosecutor, she was denied a lawyer, and we have not been able to have access to her either. Now that she has already been convicted to 8 years, we have stepped in to represent her and take up the charge, the case, but unfortunately, the prosecutor is preventing us or her family from reading about the case. Whatever action the court has done in this regard is actually illegal.
How typical is this? Of course, she's an American journalist, an Iranian-American, and so we hear a great deal about it. Does this happen to journalists on a regular basis in Iran?
اینکه حتما ژورنالیست‌های آمریکایی رو در ایران دستگیر کنن نه معمول نیست ولی کن در این حال
It is not typical to arrest Iranian Americans, but in the past several years, few of them have been arrested, including Ms. Haleh Esfandiari, Mr. Kian Tajbakhsh, and let us not forget Ms. Zahra Kazemi, the Iranian-Canadian photojournalist who was arrested and died in prison.
Who you represent?
Yes, I represented the family of Ms. Zahra Kazemi and represented Ms. Haleh Esfandiari.
And with the journalist, the photojournalist who was beaten to death in jail, what has come of her case brought by her family?
Yes, 5 years have passed since that happened. And in this 5 years, basically what has occurred is that the court has primarily said that has issued one verdict over the case after reviewing it and has said that, well, it is true that she died in prison. And I must say that we filed a lawsuit against the head of the prison as well as those who arrested her at the time. But then the court went on to say that even so, they cannot point the finger at anyone and say exactly who was responsible for her death. We believe that if our investigations were taken note of at the court and the evidence that we presented was accounted for, they could have found the killers.
Shirin Ebadi, the Iranian president said on Sunday that the American journalist who's been convicted of spying, Roxanna Saberi, should be allowed to offer a full defense during her appeal. What do you make of his comments? How much control does he have over this process?
این حرف ایشون تکرار قانونی است که ما در ایران داریم.
His statement repeats an existing law in Iran, but it is regrettable that her lawyers, we, including my colleague Mr. Sultani, who tried to go and meet her 6 times, have been denied access to her or to her files.
Could Ahmadinejad weigh in here?
آقای احمدی‌نژاد رئیس جمهور هستند و طبق قانون
Mr. Ahmadinejad is the president, and according to the Constitution, the judiciary must be independent.
I wanted to get your reaction to the United States and other countries refusing to participate in the Durban Conference Against Racism.
من اصولاً با
In general, I disagree with boycotting any meeting or international event. Any country, any representative should be free to attend and speak his or her mind. Why not?
The comments of President Ahmadinejad at the meeting that many representatives who were there walked out of.
بعد از جنگ جهانی دوم به بهانه قربانی شدن یهودیان و سوء استفاده از هولوکاست.
After World War II, under the pretext of Jewish suffering and by taking advantage of the Holocaust, they used aggression and military force to turn an entire nation into refugees. And they transplanted people from Europe, the United States, and other parts of the world into their land, establishing a thoroughly racist government in occupied Palestine.
What is your response to his response and the walkout?
آقای احمدی‌نژاد میبایستی
Mr. Ahmadinejad should have talked about how to go about establishing an independent government for Palestine and how to find ways of ending the war in the Middle East.
من با حرفایی که ایشون زدن
I disagree with what he said, and I do not endorse his opinions of this matter. At the same time, I think that instead of leaving the conference room, people should have stayed and just expressed their opinion freely and openly.
So what is happening here? What do you think of the political effect of the isolation of Iran, Shirin Ebadi?
Do you isolate a country by leaving a conference room?
Overall, the targeting of Iran, saying it's developing nuclear weapons, the United States, Israel raising the specter of possibly attacking Iran for this.
من به حقوق بین الملل عمومی احترام میگذارم و فکر میکنم که وقتی که
I respect public international law, and I personally believe that when the UN Security Council passes 3 resolutions condemning Iran and also demanding it to halt uranium enrichment, then the Iranian government must voluntarily do so. In my opinion, that's how the Iranian government can increase the trust of the international community and prevent further sanctions.
President Obama, what difference has he made a difference, do you feel? And do the people of Iran feel differently about him than President Bush?
ادبیات سیاسی زمان آقای اوباما فرق کرده.
Well, the political culture has changed under Mr. Obama, but I hope that in practice, too, we will witness the change.
He has called for dialogue, raised the level of the communication between high-level officials in Iran and the United States.
I believe the dialogue must begin, and it must also simultaneously be conducted at three levels: between the heads of state, between the parliament and Congress, as well as between civil society groups in both countries.